The bank statement wasn't the hardest thing I put on that table. The hardest thing was watching my son's face when he realized I'd been keeping count. I'd driven the 40 minutes to their place in Oakville on a Thursday evening in February, the kind of cold that gets into your knees before you even step out of the car. I sat in the driveway for a moment. The house was lit up. Every room, it looked like. My son had texted me that afternoon. "Mom, we really need to talk. Come for dinner. It's important." I knew what it was about. I'd known for 2 weeks since my daughter-in-law had mentioned, very casually, over the phone, that daycare was going to be financially impossible in the new year. I brought a bottle of Pinot Gris and a folder. They didn't notice the folder right away. My son, I'll call him my son, because that's what he is to me. Whatever else happened that night had set the table properly. Cloth napkins, the good wine glasses, a roast chicken with potatoes. His wife, Sabine, was moving around the kitchen with the baby on her hip, all smiles when I came in. It was the kind of dinner that announces itself as a negotiation before anyone says a word. "You didn't have to do all this," I said, hanging up my coat. "We wanted to," Sabine said. She kissed my cheek. "We never do this anymore. We used to do this every second Sunday." That stopped about 14 months ago, around the time Sabine's mother, Monique, started coming for weekends. I set my folder on the side table by the front door and went to find my granddaughter. She was in the living room, pulling herself up on the edge of the coffee table with that look babies get when they've just figured something out and they want the whole world to witness it. She was 11 months old, and she had my son's eyes and Sabine's stubbornness, and I loved her so completely that it sometimes frightened me. I sat on the floor with her for a while, just the two of us. She grabbed my finger. I thought, whatever happens tonight, this is the part that matters. Dinner was lovely. My son opened the wine and talked about his work. He's in commercial real estate, has been for 12 years. And Sabine talked about the baby's newest words, which were up and hot, and something that sounded like more, but she wasn't sure. I asked about the neighborhood, about their neighbors, about nothing in particular. We were all being very careful. It wasn't until Sabine had cleared the plates and my son refilled my glass that he said it. "Mom, we've been thinking, and we really think the best solution for everyone, is if you retired." I looked at him. "Just hear me out," he said quickly, like I'd already started arguing. I hadn't said anything. Full-time daycare in Oakville right now is running close to $2,000 a month. That's almost $24,000 a year, and with everything, the mortgage, the car payments, Sabine's mat leave just ended, so she's only back part-time. We're stretched. We're really stretched, Mom. And you've been talking about retiring for years. I've done talking about retiring at 67, I said. I'm 63. But you could, he said. You could do it now. Your pension would cover your expenses, wouldn't it? And then you'd have time, real time, with her. He gestured toward the baby monitor on the counter. You've said yourself you want more time with her. I looked at Sabine. She was watching her hands. And what would this look like exactly? I asked. Monday through Friday, my son said. We'd drop her off on the way to work, probably around 8. We'd pick her up around 6, sometimes 6:30 depending on traffic, 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. I am a nearly retired school administrator. Before that, I was a teacher for 19 years, and before that, I was a girl who grew up in a small house in New Brunswick with 4 siblings and not enough of anything. I know what 10 hours a day of childcare looks like. It is not retirement. It is a second career with no pay, no benefits, no sick days, and no severance. And the weekends? I asked. No, my son said quickly. Just weekdays. Your weekends are your own. How generous, I thought, but I didn't say it. Can I ask you something? I said. Of course. Does this change anything about the refinancing? There was a pause. Sabine looked up. 3 months earlier, my son had called me to ask if I'd be willing to co-sign on a refinancing of their mortgage. Their variable rate was resetting, he explained. They'd taken it out 4 years ago when rates were low, and now the new payment would be nearly $600 more per month. They needed someone with a strong credit profile and a stable income to co-sign. I'd said I'd think about it. I was still thinking about it. We'd still need you to do that, Sabine said. Her voice was even. The two things kind of go together. Without the refinancing, the payment goes up in April, and then the daycare on top of that, it's just not workable. So, I said slowly, you're asking me to retire, which would reduce my income significantly, and also co-sign a loan that was approved based on my current income. A silence. We'd figure it out, my son said. I nodded. I picked up my wine glass. I set it down again. I'm going to go get something from my coat, I said. I came back with the folder. I want to be clear about something. I didn't put that folder together to punish anyone. I'm not that kind of person, and I don't want to be. I made it because I am 63 years old, and I have spent my entire adult life watching what happens when women, mothers especially, make financial decisions based on love instead of information, then spend the next decade trying to recover. My own mother did it. 2 of my closest friends did it. I swore I would never be the person who didn't know her own numbers, so I knew my numbers, and that night I brought them. I set the folder on the table and opened it. I've been doing some thinking too, I said. The first page was a simple breakdown of my income at retirement versus my current income. I'm a principal at a public school board, have been for 8 years. My salary is listed there in plain numbers. My projected pension at 63, if I took early retirement, is also there. The difference is not small. It is the kind of number that changes what you can and cannot do. This is what I bring home now, I said, pointing. This is what I'd bring home if I retired today. The difference is just over $22,000 a year in net income. My son looked at the page. He didn't say anything. Now, I said, turning to the next page. This is a calculation the bank gave me when I spoke to my mortgage advisor last week. If I co-sign the refinancing and then retire within the same calendar year, this is how the bank would likely view my file on any subsequent application. My borrowing capacity drops significantly. More importantly, if you were to default, we're not going to default, Sabine said. I know you don't plan to, I said. I don't think you plan to. But I also know that your variable rate reset is coming, and I know that your current household expenses. I turned to the third page, run very close to your net income. I had not hacked their accounts. I want to be clear about that too. But I had paid attention, and over the past 2 years, I had seen things. I'd seen the car lease on a new SUV. I'd seen the renovation they'd done on the kitchen. I'd co-signed the original mortgage because I trusted them, and because I loved them, and because the alternative was watching my son rent a basement apartment while his friends bought houses. I understood why I'd done it. I didn't regret it. But I also had learned from it. There were 3 pages left in the folder. The third page was about Monique. I want to say this carefully, because I have never had anything against Sabine's mother. She is a warm woman who loves her daughter and loves that baby, and she lives 40 minutes in the other direction, in Hamilton. She comes to see the baby on Saturdays, most weeks, which I think is lovely. That is not what I put on the third page. What I put on the third page was the e-transfer history my son didn't know about. It happened this way. 2 months before that dinner, I was helping Sabine sort through some paperwork at the house. She'd asked me to come over and help organize things while the baby napped, which I was glad to do. There was a pile of bank envelopes on the counter that she'd asked me not to touch. I didn't touch them. But one had been opened already and slipped sideways, and when I moved a stack of mail to find a pen, I saw the statement underneath. I didn't read it. But I saw the column of entries. I saw the recipient name. I saw the amounts. $250. Every 2 weeks. Going to Monique. I put the mail back. I didn't say anything, but I am a school administrator, which means I have spent 25 years noticing things I'm not supposed to notice and deciding what to do about them later. Later was now. I want to ask about this, I said, setting the page down. Sabine went very still. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, I said. I just want to understand the full picture. Because from what I can see, Monique comes on Saturdays and she's been receiving. I paused. An arrangement. A regular arrangement. And I want to know whether the expectation is that I would work 5 days a week, 10 hours a day, at no arrangement, while that continues. My son looked at his wife. It was a long look, the kind of look that happens when a conversation has been missing from a marriage. She just helps out, Sabine said finally. She comes on Saturdays and she watches the baby so we can have a morning. She's been doing it since August and the payments started in August, I said. Not a question. Sabine's jaw tightened. It's not a lot of money. It's not about the amount, I said. It's about the principle. You're asking me to retire from a job I love, co-sign a loan that exposes my retirement savings if something goes wrong, and provide full-time childcare at no cost, while a separate arrangement exists that neither of you mentioned to me. I could hear the heat in my own voice. I didn't try to hide it. I'd been measured and careful all night, and I thought I had earned one moment of honest feeling. Mom, my son said, I need you to listen to me, I said. Not as someone who loves you, which I do. I love you more than I have words for, but as a woman who has watched other women make this exact mistake. I know what you're asking me to do. You're asking me to take on a significant financial risk and an enormous time commitment, and you're asking me to do it because I love you, and because you're assuming that love means I'll say yes to anything. But that's not what love is. That's not what I taught you love was. The baby made a sound from the monitor. We all looked at it, she settled. The refinancing, I said when the moment passed. I'm not going to co-sign it. I want to be honest with you about that. The reason I can't co-sign it is the same reason I can't retire to watch the baby. They're connected. My income is what makes me useful to your bank. If I retire, your refinancing won't go through anyway. This plan doesn't actually work. I need you to hear that. My son looked like he hadn't thought of that. He genuinely hadn't. I could see it. I've talked to my mortgage advisor, I said, and the broker she referred me to. The cosign was always based on my employment income. If I'm on pension, I may not meet their threshold. You may want to have that conversation with your own bank before April. Sabine stood up. She took her wine glass into the kitchen. I heard the tap run. I'm not trying to hurt you, I said to my son. Just him, because Sabine wasn't in the room, and I had a different relationship with my son than with his wife, and that was fine. I'm trying to save us from something that would hurt us all more. If I co-sign this and then something changes, your job, the market, anything, I am on the hook. My pension, my house, everything I've spent 40 years building. I'm 63 years old. I cannot rebuild from that. Do you understand? He was quiet for a long time. I didn't think about it that way, he said finally. I know, I said. I know you didn't. You thought about the baby and the daycare and the monthly payment, and you thought, Mom can fix it. And I understand that. I've spent your whole life being the person who fixes things. But I'm not going to fix this one. Not like this. Sabine came back from the kitchen. Her eyes were red at the edges. She sat down. What are we supposed to do? She asked, and she didn't sound angry anymore. She sounded 29 and scared, which is what she was. I felt something soften in me. Not all the way, but some. You have options, I said. The federal child care agreements have brought licensed daycare down to $10 a day in Ontario for most families who qualify. You should check whether you qualify because at your household income you may not, but it's worth calling. There are also home daycare co-ops. There are corporate subsidy programs through some employers. You should ask HR because those programs exist and people don't always know. And there's the question of your spending. I said that part gently, but I said it. You have 2 car payments. You have a country club membership. Those are choices. Daycare is also a choice, and it might have to win. My son looked at the folder. You really put all of this together, he said. I've been thinking about it for 2 weeks, I said. Since Sabine mentioned it on the phone, why didn't you just say no then? Because I wanted to understand what I was saying no to, I said. I wanted to be sure, and I wanted you to understand it too. Not just hear a refusal, but understand why. We sat for a while. Nobody spoke. It wasn't comfortable, but it wasn't the end of the world either. Before I left, I held my granddaughter one more time. Sabine had brought her down. Maybe because she wanted to. Maybe because she knew I needed it. The baby grabbed my earring, which she always does, and I laughed, and she laughed back at me. That big gummy laugh that makes everything else go small for a moment. I'll still take her on Saturdays, I told Sabine. Whenever you need a morning, I'll do that. Sabine looked at me for a moment. You don't have to. I want to, I said, but it has to be because I want to, not because you've arranged the finances so I have no other option. She nodded. I think she understood. Or she was starting to. The drive home was quiet. My hands were steady on the wheel. The highway was almost empty at that hour, just the wet red glow of taillights in the dark, and the radio playing something I didn't listen to. I have been, in my life, a daughter who helped too much, a wife who gave too much away, a mother who was so afraid of being needed less that I let people need me in ways that cost me. I built a career and a pension and a financial life that is mine, genuinely mine, because I started doing the math instead of just doing what was asked. It didn't make me a harder person. I don't think it did. I think it made me honest. My son called 4 days later. He said he'd talked to the bank. He said he'd talked to HR. He said they'd found a licensed daycare 8 minutes from their house with a subsidized rate and a spot available in March. His voice was careful, like he was deciding how much to feel about it. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. I think I put you in an unfair position. I let that land for a second before I answered. You were scared, I said, and you trusted me to help. I do help, just not that way. Yeah, he said. I know. There was a pause. Is the offer still open? Saturdays? Always, I said. We didn't talk about the folder. We didn't need to. The math had said everything that needed saying, and the rest of it, the love, the history, the granddaughter who grabs earrings and laughs at her own reflection. That part didn't need a spreadsheet. That part was never in question. I knew that. I just needed him to know it too.